When I was a very small boy, I remember harvesting with a horse and a binder and sheaves being thrown out onto the ground, and then seeing men with a horse and a cart or a wagon loading up the sheaves onto a wagon and taking them in, stacking them into a rick.
How has farming on the Ridgeway changed from generation to generation?
Well, if you go back into the time when my great-grandfather came, much of Bincombe Hill was covered in scrub and gorse, and a lot of the land which is in the valley below Bincombe Hill was clay ground, and that ground, some area is called Bincombe Marsh, or where Marsh Dairy is, and that was very wet land, but that was drained, a lot of it, in the good times in the latter part of the 19th century, which turned marshland into good productive land. Between the wars, quite a lot of the gorse and scrub was cleared, but not a vast amount. I don't think it was all cleared until after the Second World War, or later on in the Second World War, when food was fairly short and farmers were forced to plough up land to feed the nation.
So what kind of farming did your great-grandfather do, and has this changed through the generations?
My great-grandfather had a flock of Dorset horn sheep. In fact, it was established in 1886 and allegedly is one of the best flocks, or was at his funeral service. It was stated to be one of the best in Dorset and beyond. They also had a dairy at Marsh Dairy, but in those days, of course, everything was hand-milked and everything was hand-sheared, and there were lots of staff working on the farm, because you'd have horses for some of the heavy jobs like ploughing, but a horse and a plough might do, say, 1 acre a day, that sort of thing. Or if men would hoe a field, you know how long it takes to hoe your garden. If you've got to hoe a whole field of Swedes or turnips or whatever, it clearly takes a very long time. And I suppose a huge change has been the gradual mechanisation through my life. So instead of one man milking 6 cows by hand, now one man might milk 150 cows on his own, say twice a day. And harvesting, whereas you just do a few tons a day when you're harvesting with a horse and binder, now you will have a combine which might produce 100 tons an hour of wheat. I mean, it's just been such an absolutely colossal change. And I suppose if you go back, even when I was small, a ton of barley per acre was really quite a good yield. But due to plant breeding and disease control, and weed control in particular, it's now not uncommon to have 4 or even more tons per acre, or that's around 10 tons a hectare. And of course, as time goes on, the population increases, the land mass becomes less, and so we do need more and more to feed the world anyway.
Can you tell me about some of the constraints that you have had farming in the Ridgeway?
Well, I suppose in the early days, there was no water on the hills. Well, then pipe water came just after the war, which meant you could have water on the hills, which meant you could have cattle on the hills. That made a huge difference to what you could do. Before that, you could only have sheep. I suppose the other big problem on the chalk ground was that when they first ploughed it up and grew cereals, the big problem was weeds, charlock and runch in particular. Well, then just after the war, there's a spray called MCPA, which meant you could spray the weeds and the cereals would grow. So that was a massive advance. And if you go back probably 40 years ago, 50 years ago perhaps, we would be getting, say, 3,000 litres a cow of milk. Well, now it's not unusual to be getting over 8,000, 9,000 or 10,000 litres per cow per year.